Derby County head to Fratton Park ahead of the 5 most important games of their careers. It's going to be a very important and interesting field for Derby County to play with. As you can see already by the league table, Derby County have themselves just outside of those relegation places. And with the next 2 games coming up versus Portsmouth and Luton, they could find themselves with a massive gap between themselves and Cardiff City down in those relegation places. But those relegation places could ultimately change around so much over the course of the next few weeks. Obviously, we know there's not that long left in the season. It's 5 games left for Derby County and those surrounding teams, and we know how close it is. Anywhere from 17th down to 24th could potentially get relegated, and there's a minor chance that the likes of Queen's Park Rangers and the likes of Preston North End can get dragged in, although at the moment it is looking highly unlikely. Obviously, Derby County head to Fratton Park tomorrow, where they face up against 17th place Portsmouth in a massive game, in my opinion. Derby County and Pompey went head to head at a similar time this time last year, where Joe Ward scored a double and it helped both Portsmouth and Derby County go on to secure promotion. Well, now it's Derby County who need a victory as much as possible so that they can get themselves out of this relegation trouble. Now, obviously, for Derby County and Cardiff City, if they pick up a victory this weekend and Luton Town fail to win up against Blackburn, you could have a gap of up to 4 points between themselves and that drop zone. And also you look at the likes of Stoke City and Hull City, who are only a couple of points ahead of the 2 sides. And you look at Hull City facing up against Coventry, a massive game. Coventry, who beat Portsmouth in midweek. You've got Stoke City facing up against Cardiff. So if Cardiff were to win that game, Stoke City will fall into that drop zone. So it's a massive game. So obviously that is so long as Derby County pick up a victory as well. If Derby County don't win, Derby County would fall back if Cardiff were to win. So obviously for Derby, what we really need is Stoke City and Cardiff to draw. We need Hull City to lose, Oxford to lose to Sheffield Wednesday. But is that going to happen? Who knows, obviously. Who knows? Nobody knows right now. And obviously for Derby County, you then go on to the fixture versus Luton Town, currently sitting 2 points behind and 2 places behind Derby County. That is going to be an absolutely massive game on Easter Friday as Derby County and Luton go head-to-head at Pride Park. Now, there's only 2 home games left for Derby County and 3 away games. I think Derby County need 3 wins in order to secure themselves in the Championship for next season. I think we have to win the Luton game. We have to win the Pompey game, in my opinion. And then one of the last 3. Realistically, I think there's a possibility that Derby County could be safe coming out of West Brom. Because I think we could find ourselves 6 points clear of safety coming out of the Luton game, which is obviously going to be really interesting because it would mean that Cardiff lose to Stoke and then Cardiff go ahead and lose to Sheffield United as well. But it's going to be really interesting to see how it does stack up for Derby, and there's some massive decisions to be made by the manager, John Eustace, for Derby. Obviously, with Sondre Langas and Callum Elder currently being out with knocks, how are they going to refilter themselves back into the squad? If they do, if they're even able to. We know that down at the bottom of the table, a lot of teams are suffering with those injuries, but none more so than Derby County, who currently have, how many players is it on the injury list? It's probably a lot less than it is on FootMob, but you've got the likes of Ben Osborne, Callum Elder, Blackett Taylor, Curtis Nelson, Dejan Brown, David Ozo, Kmar Roof, Jorgen Selverson, Ryan Yambi, Sondre Langas. It's a difficult field to put together, sort of when most of our key players are out injured. Like Callum Elder would be starting if he's fit. Blackett Taylor, in my opinion, if he was fit when Eustace came in, would have been starting. Nelson probably would have been starting. Ozo obviously would have been starting. Selverson would have been in and around it. Niambi probably would have been starting. Langas obviously would have been starting as well. So you look at our injury list and most of them are those key players who we're going to be missing out on, essentially. And obviously as we head into this run, like the only one who's actually even close to coming back is Ben Osborne. So it's going to be very, very difficult to see how. Obviously, Derby County need to get the job done, and John Eustace has 5 games to get this job done. There's only 2 more 3 o'clock kickoffs. One of them's on Monday versus West Brom, and one of them on the 26th of April versus Hull City. And in my opinion, I think the next 2 games are our most important games. If we win both of them, I think we're in unbelievably good position no matter what happens elsewhere. Because if we beat Luton, ultimately we build that gap to below us, which will obviously if we beat Pompey, we go up to 45. Luton face Blackburn. Let's say they draw, for example, that puts them on 41 with them 4 points ahead. If we then beat Luton after that, it then gives us another 3 points, which puts us 7 points clear of Luton. So I'm not saying that we're going to win back-to-back games. I'm not saying that we're going to beat Pompey and Luton, and I'm ultimately not turning around and saying that we should win these games, because they are going to be tough tests. But Derby County beat Portsmouth 4-0 at Pride Park Stadium early this season under Paul Warne. It's going to be a completely different game this time around. Both teams sort of... Derby County are now in more of a injury situation than they were back then, and ultimately under a different manager with quite a few different players, really. Because if we go back to that game where Derby County faced up against Pompey back in December, where we won 4-0. Where is it? It is here. If we look at the lineup that was put out, so Zetterstrom in goal, Wilson right back, and Fozzie left back. They're three that could play. Cashin and Nelson. Cashin's not here. Nelson's gone. Kenzo hasn't been starting. He'll probably be on the bench. Osborne injured. Adams, he'll be starting. And Mendes Lang doesn't start anymore. Yates and Harness will be up front. You look at the players who came off the bench. Collins is no longer here. Thompson is now a starter. Elder, when fit, is a starter. Phillips is a starter. Caden Jackson doesn't play. You look at the other players on the bench. Barkhazen doesn't really play. Dejan Brown and Corey Beckett-Taylor both injured. Obviously, Josh Vickers out as well. But obviously, yes, there has been changes for Pompey as well. You look at Elias Sorensen, who's moved back to where he came from and things like that. And there's been some changes for them. Obviously, I doubt they'll be playing Marlon Packett centre-back. I doubt McIntyre will be playing at centre-back. I'm pretty sure McIntyre's out for the season. So it's sort of a really sort of difficult position that both teams sort of find themselves in when it comes to those injury problems. But for Derby County, it's massive, and it's imperative that they get a result, because not only would Derby getting a result drag Pompey back into the scrap, but should Cardiff City lose to Stoke, it also then pulls Derby away from Cardiff City, which will be absolutely massive. And I really wish we played Cardiff City at some point, because having to sort of match results, it always frustrates me and it always infuriates me, because you never know what is going to happen elsewhere and you can't control it. And obviously, Cardiff versus Stoke, realistically, best bet for that is we want a draw. Really, I think that's... Do we want a draw? Because obviously, it don't care if we finish 21st or 17th. Like, that doesn't really matter. But what we do need is we just need to build that gap up again, because obviously... obviously, since we've been out, it's never been more than 2 points, I don't think, which is obviously, it's a decent gap, but ultimately it's not enough. And realistically, if we want to secure survival before the end of the season, we need to put at least 6 points on Cardiff by the time we get to West Brom, because I can't really see us beating West Brom, although they're in a bad run of form at the moment, lost the last 3. It's going to be a tough test away from home. Obviously, the Hull City game is going to be a massive one. The Luton game, the Stoke game. There's so many important games. I don't want to be going into that Stoke game knowing that we have to beat Stoke to stay in the division. And I don't want to go into the Hull City game thinking, oh, if we lose here, we're back in the drop. And that's what worries me about going into these games, is you've got that sort of pressure that you don't really want of at the moment. If we go 1-0 down versus Pompey, I don't know when Cardiff play actually. Let's take a look at when Cardiff play. If we go 1-0 down against Pompey, they play at the same time. So if we go 1-0 down against Pompey, we fall into the drop zone. And I just don't want to see us fall into that sort of drop zone and see how. And I don't want that to negatively sort of impact the players, the staff, the fans on the sideline as well, because it's a massive, massive run-in for Derby County. And don't get me wrong, I think Cardiff City have a really difficult run-in, because they've got Sheffield United, they've got West Brom, they've got Norwich, obviously Stoke and Oxford in there as well. But they've drew the last 3 games. 1 win, 3 draws in a row. And obviously, if they get another draw versus Stoke, that's fine for us, so long as we match it, obviously. But you look at Stoke, let's have a look at their running. They've obviously got Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds, Sheffield United, and then us, which is obviously a difficult run. Who else is down there with us? Hull City. Who have they got? Face up against Coventry, Swansea, Preston. They've essentially got 2 teams with nothing to play for, and 2 teams scrapping for their lives, and a team scrapping for the playoffs. So you're in that sort of conversation again of Hull City fighting for their lives against Derby and Pompey fighting for their lives, but Preston and Swansea are pretty much, like, I'm sure they're safe now, really. Swansea on 51, Preston on 49. I think Preston probably need a point, and they're safe. You look at, obviously we've looked at Cardiff, Luton. They've got to go up against Blackburn, Bristol City, Coventry, West Brom. I think Luton are, if they don't beat Blackburn and then beat us, I think they're gone. If I'm realistically, I think this weekend we could see sort of Luton pretty much relegation confirmed. Obviously, it won't be sort of mathematically confirmed, but if they lose this weekend, Derby and Cardiff both win, that's a 4-point gap to safety against Stoke, and a really difficult run-in facing up against, obviously, us, Bristol City, Coventry and West Brom. Obviously, you've then got, obviously, Plymouth Argyle, who I personally think are gone. And especially when you look at their final 5 games, Sheffield United, Middlesbrough, Coventry and Leeds. The only game I can really see them getting anything out of is probably Preston, because Preston are pretty much on the beach, because they're essentially done, aren't they? When you think about it, 49 points. I can't see everyone below them getting 49 points. So, but obviously Preston, if we look at them, Leeds, QPR, Hull, Plymouth, Bristol City, like, they could fall into it, worst case, but honestly can't really see it happening. Now, what game is happening tonight as I'm recording this video? Let's take a look, because that'll be sort of really, really interesting to see how that one goes. If we look at the matches, Burnley, Norwich, that don't really impact anything to do with us. It could see Burnley go obviously 3 points clear with everyone in equal points at the top of the table. Norwich City could sort of give themselves an outside chance at playoffs should they win. But obviously it would require Coventry, Bristol, Middlesbrough, West Brom, Mill and Watford all sort of drop in a couple of games, which may not happen. Now, obviously, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, you turn on that notification bell, and stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County content heading your way. There will be a match review out tomorrow, so if you have not done so already, make sure that notification bell is turned on, and I'll catch you tomorrow afternoon.